This is part 4 of our Ninja restoration. And I think, as I'm looking back, yesterday I think I ducked a little bit of a bullet anyway, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to have the side panels on the 650. I wanted to have them raw carbon or painted. And then I remembered on this bike, when I originally did the 750, I had what amounts to be this panel green. And when I put it all in my mind, it all looked good. And when I brought it out to the garage and looked at it, Karen came out and she said, you know what you did wrong? There's too much green. And so when I painted that little piece black, and I did that right after the restoration, I always think, well, you know, having somebody else's opinion is always really worthwhile. And John Pothier reminded me, he did all the stenciling and decaling for all of these bikes. What he reminded me of is, hey, you're getting it too busy. I had put some extra arrowheads on the fender and some extra things that were just a little bit over the top. And Karen and John both have reminded me just to keep this simple and dignified, and that's the direction I'm going in. So those parts, rather than being raw carbon, I'm going to have them shiny, shiny black. And maybe even with a little logo on them. See, because as the 750 is, you never know till you put it all together. That's the whole thing with any of these bikes. And just like the graphics on the tail of the FZR, we did them over and over. And how much time John and I spent designing up that FZR logo, and just endless amounts of work on decaling and badging. But in the end, boy, does it pay off. And it's little details. It's always some little detail like this painting the side cover black that you think isn't going to matter until ultimately you do it. And then you go, oh, geez, why didn't I think of that earlier? So the one side cover today, if it's a funny day today, I have a doctor visit right in the middle of the day. So I'm going to try to work on it. Get some more primer and or black on it today, and maybe even some clear, depending on how the weather's really been cold and brutal the last couple days. But just to see if I can get a part painted and shiny, and I can look at it ultimately and see what it's all going to look like. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, because that is such a focal part of that motorcycle. And it's amazing. Small little parts change everything. And you never know until you put it all together, and then you say, oh, that doesn't look right. Oh, that doesn't look right. And then the worst of all, I bring Karen out here and she says, I don't like that at all. But we're still married after 28 years, so I guess it can't be all bad. Anyway, down to the shop. In this time of year, my fish pond is a leaf pond, and boy, there is so much work. It's so annoying. I have to do this several times a day, scoop out the leaves, and you can see the fish are already in hibernation here at 25 degrees. So it's drying overnight under a heating vent, and I always like to let the paint totally outgas. This will be ready. I want to sand it out one more time. There's still a couple little flaws in it. Get another coat of primer on, and I can head out to the doctor. Come back and maybe get some black on that this afternoon. That would really make me happy. I really can't wait to see what this is going to all look like when it's in one piece. Using some 400 sandpaper and a block, I want to go detail this part out. It's got 2 coats of primer on it already, but each time I sand it, I'm picking up little high spots, little low spots, little whatever. And the idea is, if I can get one more coat of primer on this and get back later today, and that'll be the warmest part of the day then. See, I'm trying to plan around a lot of things that I don't have a lot of control over. But what's going to happen, and it'll be in my favor, I'll be in the warmest part of the day. I can get the black on this, and maybe if the day plays out well, get some clear on it. And then tomorrow I can look at it in real life outside in the driveway, shoot some pictures for John and for myself, and take Karen out to dinner. I think she really thought this through a lot better than I did. In my mind, I'm still of the when I make carbon fiber parts, I always like to see the carbon fiber, and but in this case, that radius is so in gloss black, that's going to show real well. And I have the option of putting one of the badges here. John is working on some really cool custom badging that I'm sure is going to come to fruition very soon. And so, and the thing is that I always explain to my friends and people that come to the shop, I like to have every day different than the day before. I am not a big fan of having Groundhog Day for a life. I like every day to be different. Now the 400 sandpaper will leave just enough tooth that I can get a final coat of primer on this. By doing it with a block, if there are any little low spots or imperfections, they'll pop right up to the surface, just like any block sanding will do. Again, this is one of the extra little steps, and a lot of people would just say, hey, you could skip that step and skip that step, and yeah, and then in the end, for the rest of your life, you're looking at something that could have been better if you spent 1 hour. I like to spend that hour. Now, because black is, for all purposes, the most reflective color there is, and if you buy and paint right off, you know, if you don't have some black paint you're using, if you're going to buy it, there is a color that Bentley made, Bentley Black, that's supposed to be the blackest of the black. I have the black from the FZR, so it really doesn't matter to me. We'll use that up, and the FZR paint just worked out great. Well, just like block sand and anything, when you block sand, you see the little high spots, little ridges, little imperfections. It all comes to the surface, and that's the reason for the block sanding part. Now I'll get another coat of primer on it. Maybe it'll need 2 more coats. I don't know. I don't care. This has to be perfect before I put the black on, and the black has to be perfect before I put the clear on, because once that's buffed out, and it's this, the whole reason for having to put the carbon fiber on here is I wanted this to be a radius. I didn't want this to be an edge. I wanted it to look like this whole part flowed, and there's a part that came right from Kawasaki, and by being super gloss black, that'll really be the final touch, I hope. Now, another trick that's worth its weight in gold, when you're done, when you think you have a final sanded part, it's good to have, these are real thin like surgical gloves, and rub your hand over it, because the surgical glove allows your hand to just pick up any little spot. And I'm really, since this is going to be one of the focal parts of the motorcycle, I really don't want to have anything on here that's going to pop through the black. I let this to really be nice. It looks like I've got it, by the way. And it looks like I can get out there before I leave and get a coat of primer on. Now, anytime I say this, there's primer, and it is primer sealer. In the case of this part, we're using primer sealer. If we were doing a metal part, down in bare metal, we'd use self-etching primer. This is always good on plastic, on Bondo, on the kind of stuff we're doing now, and on carbon fiber. Now, a quick tack ragging, and we're going to get out there. I hate days when there's something in the middle of the day, and then I have two right in the middle of the thing. I have to go somewhere. I always rather have doctor visits in the morning, early or late, but in the middle of the day, very annoying. Now, put that up by the heating vent to dry, and I have no idea how this day is going to play out or what time I'm going to get back. It's mystery meat. So I got back here, and when I got back, these pictures from John were here of a concept of one of the logos, the 650R, and one of many that we're working on. But the next thing I'm going to be doing after these side panels, I think, is to paint those bottom plastic dull panels. And that'll give us a better view of how this is all going to look when it's together. So I'm finally back, and there's not much of the day left, but I think I have enough time. Since these are drying under a heating vent, I want to check that they don't need any touch-ups, and if they don't, it'll be, I'll get the black and maybe even a clear on today. So I know this board is on being probably overkill, but in the case of this bike, the defining feature of the bike is the gloss black with the gold wheels and the gold trim. So I do remember when last couple of times I bought black paint, there were choices of black. There isn't just black, and there's black, and there's black with, if you look at the label, what 1% of this or whatever. But then there's Bentley black, that's black. Now, I have no idea what that is, but I had a pint of it mixed up. I have the paint from the FCR wheels left over, but here's the thing I don't want to have. The bike originally has little specks of gold in the paint. I don't want to have that in the final bike. The whole bike's going to get painted, but all the parts I paint black, I want shiny, gloss black. And that was one of the things that, after I thought it through, yeah, I was originally going to start putting carbon fiber parts everywhere. I'm not so sure. And the more I think of it, the more that limo black, Bentley black. So what I did to ensure that I will not have a problem, I put all the old black paint into a jar, marked it, labeled it, sealed it up so I don't confuse this with the new black paint. I want I want all of the paint when this bike is totally done, all the black to come out of one can. And this will be the black Bentley paint. I hope this is going to be, in the beginning I thought maybe I wouldn't have to, that'll matter. And in the end I just decided it's got to be gloss black. So now I've stacked the deck in a way that's really good. I have enough gold pigment to paint a trailer truck, and I have enough Bentley black to paint this whole motorcycle black 3 times. I will not be done and then run out of paint and say, there's a problem. So it's a lesson I've learned the hard way. I want to get out there before it gets dark, and I want to hopefully get the black on, and a half hour later, get the first 2 coats of clear on. That'll be the goal. And then see what this is going to look like, because that'll mean then tomorrow when it's dry, and with the heat, it's 25 degrees outside. With the heat, that part will dry in an hour. I can look at it on the motorcycle and really convince myself that was a key part of getting this to look like the way I wanted it to look. And that's how these kind of things evolve. They don't just sit down with the sketch pad, make one sketch, and it's done. They evolve and they change, and people give you feedback, and my wife comes in and hits me with a roll of paper towels, and at the end, though, you have something like we have, and I'm very happy with all the restorations that are in that garage, and we want to add this one to that list. All right, time to put that up by the heating vent to dry. The day looks pretty unpredictable. It was sunny, it's cloudy. It hasn't gotten a lot warmer, but we're getting our painting done. 20 minutes to dry up by the heating vent. So I thought before I shoot the clear, I'd mention a few things. These are all good tips for shooting clear. Number one, if you understand clear, this is what we have used up to now. Of course, the can is empty, almost empty. Probably guy could paint 1 baseball or something with this. So what happened is Steve provided us with this, the Gavco clear, but I just did an interesting test myself to see if these parts were any different when I used 5-star or Gavco. And to be honest, I don't see any difference at all. But I remember when I did some work for Randolph Products that makes paint, when they developed the Brodak dope for model airplanes, and it was extremely interesting, the things I learned. Number one, if you look at a Gavco can, if you look at any of these cans, it never tells you who makes it. Never. It says distributed by. So that's always one problem. So what it's telling me is there's some place in the universe, there's probably some big, who knows where, some hole in the ground. It's like gasoline. There is an Amoco and Gulf, and there's gas. So this has no manufacturer on it. It just has a distributor. Basically the price, this is a little cheaper. I think Steve paid $70 for this, but I'm not sure. It's irrelevant. The stuff is cheap enough. It's not a problem. But I've seen no advantage at all. I've had clear in the shop that's been $250 for a gallon didn't buff out any better than this stuff. Now, it may have some advantage in longevity or in being bulletproof or something that I don't need, but for our purposes, the way under $100 clear, you can get this stuff off the internet, shipped and everything. But I wanted to mention something else. Now, Scott is working on a Suzuki. These are cool glasses, by the way. I like them. So anyway, that's why I'm wearing glasses when I'm talking to a camera. The thing about paint, and this is basically for you, Scott, he wants to buy paint off the internet and then buy something from somebody else and then go to Tractor Supply and buy this and buy that from him. I found out myself. Now, I deal with Gavin's. They're local, and it's good to have a local body shop supply. The reason is maybe you pay a few dollars more, but now if there's an incompatibility issue, you've got some tech support. When you buy things from eBay, the guy you're talking to could be in Pakistan, sitting in a bathtub smoking a cigar. You don't know. So I feel, and I've dealt with Gavin's for many, many years. That's probably them calling me on the phone, telling me my my paint's ready. The point I wanted to make is you're always better off if you can buy the paint from a local supplier and get the tech support that you need for that paint. I may have to answer that phone. You know what they do? They call 14 times a day to sell me aluminum siding. I already have aluminum siding. Maybe they think it wears out. I'm sure you have it too. But here's the whole thing. If you start with, and I wanted to do this part. Now, I originally thought I was going to make this clear carbon. It would have just eliminated one or two of the steps. But I always like to have a small test piece. In this case, it's this one side panel that has some Bondo on it, that has some primer, that has the paint that we're going to use, the Bentley Black, and the clear. And I want that paint to dry, preferably 2 to 3 days, and then I want to buff it out. And if it buffs out, then I have the map, the formula for that particular motorcycle. Now, I had that with the FCR, and it worked out great for me. I didn't have any compatibility issues in the whole time. So believe it or not, that was Turbo Steve on the phone saying he's going to come over and put some decals on his tank, but he's still waiting for one decal, so I won't be able to clear his part. But I used this on his tank already, and I've used it in the past. And the thing that always I think is worth doing if you're doing a major project like the FZR project, once you develop that, what's going to be the paint, this primer, this black, this, the whole thing, and which clear, and it's working good for you and it buffs out, freeze it in time. Make sure you have extra spare paint, because that's going to really serve you well. Where you really run aground with the ship is, and I remember from model airplane days, you'd paint with Sig Dope, then try to put another Aerogloss on top of it, and then try to put Brodeck on top of that, and then try to put, and then use that thinner with that dope and that dope with that. And by the time, and then right at the very end, when you put the last coat on, it had turned to an alligator. It was very frustrating. So we do know from, these are the things we know for sure. The government mandates changes to products almost on a yearly basis. Anything that's toxic, they make them take it out and put dishwater in. So what happens if you have a 5-year-old can of paint and a 3-year-old might not even smell the same. And when Vlad bought that paint from Italy, that water-based paint, I can't even go into it. But anyway, the other tip is I always mark on top of the can who supplied it and what year they supplied it. In this case, this is Steve's, it's 2019, because I don't like to stock 4 or 5 gallons of paint. I like to have a fresh gallon. This has a shelf life. You can extend the shelf life by putting it in the refrigerator, not the freezer. It'll double or triple the shelf life. This you don't have to worry about. It's forever. I've used stuff that's 20 years old. But this is just one of the things. It's little tidbits of information that may help you, and I hope it helps Scott. That things that have worked for me, and all of the things that have worked for me are things that they make it simpler, not harder. But I would, if you have to buy paint off the internet, an example, if you have to buy Colorite paint to match an exact bike, do a little test on a light bulb or on a piece of glass and make sure it's compatible, because some of these paints, and it's not even the paint. So what will happen if I have this paint out of this can and I go back 2 years from now, buy the exact same thing, and the government says, okay, take that product out, that's causing death in rats or something, And now we're going to put in Dawn dish detergent as a substitute. When they do that, because the people that make those rules usually, they're not painters, believe me. They don't even know what's in a can of paint. But anyway, I'm not trying to be political, but this is a good point. We are going to have many hours involved in this project. Hopefully you'll be joining us from time to time when you're bored. But the whole purpose of the video, there is no other purpose to it. There are no commercials, there are no anything. It's to pass on information that I've learned in the course of way over 50 years of painting things with every kind of paint that's ever been made. And I think I've learned a lot of do's and don'ts, and I can pass them on. And I've also made a lot of mistakes. If Midgley were to be making this video, he'd tell you about some of the mistakes, like stirring a can of gold paint in a drill press. He'll tell you. He had a gold factory for a year. Anyway, I did want to pass this on. I needed to kill like 5-10 minutes more. I wanted to have this information specifically for Scott, but for other people. And we know, like, Luciano is committed to using Rust-Oleum, and about every third time he paints something, it doesn't dry. Yeah, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, and there's money to be saved. But if you really want to, you know my opinion, and Scott, my opinion, buy it from a body shop, do a test, do right up to buffing. Once you're happy with that, then make the commitment, buy enough of the material to do the bike twice, so that if you drop the bike, like I did with the FZR, you're not painted into a corner, and then you call up the guy on eBay that you bought the paint from. Oh, Yama Yellow? We've replaced that with Dawn dish detergent. You know, and that always happens. I know it. Always have enough spare paint. Anyway, just some basic information. I want to get this. It's 4-to-1, by the way. I want to mix it up. And another trick, another tip. Get one of those cheap spray guns. The Harbor Freight ones work well for me. $15, whatever they are. And never put anything in that gun except clear. That's a clear gun. When you're done, unscrew the tip, put it in a jar of acetone. Don't leave any paint, nothing. This stuff will clog up a gun if you leave it in overnight. Clean it with acetone, put the tip and that black piece in a jar of acetone, and keep it religiously clean and never put any paint in. And what will happen if you don't do that, if you take a gun that you've painted Yama Yellow and it's perfectly clean, and you spray a gallon of acetone through the gun, a gallon, and it's perfectly clean, what happens is you'll go to your beautiful black gas tank, and right on the top, in the most obvious spot of the whole thing, out will come a thing of yellow. Guaranteed. Now, like most of the paint that's made to be clear coated, this dries up with a nice, soft, satiny look. When we put the clear on that, in about 5 minutes, we'll mix up the clear and get this coated clear, and then I'll really get to see what that's going to look like. In fact, I'm looking at it side by side with the carbon part, and I'm just thinking this looks more black. That Bentley black is blacker than black. Anyway, and Turbo Steve's coming by to do decals, so I got to get this cooking. Yeah, that coat's got to dry. We'll wait 20 minutes, put on a second coat, and put it aside to dry for the day. So John Pathia made up this rendition with the gold wheels for us, and Steve made a beautiful copy I can put right by my computer. I can get rid of the black and white one now. That came out nice, didn't it? That's a super job. So Turbo Steve is going to do the sand out here. If there are any,
actually, it's a piece of velvet.
Any flaws in this finish, it will be totally his responsibility. But that was a nice picture he made. Yeah, it's just got to be flat, and it shouldn't take long. You got a week, right? So the time window is, if you get the decal even this afternoon, run over with it, because I can shoot clear later to right up to dark. That would be once, you got a week before you go to LA, so.
It'll probably be sometime next week. It's just very,
okay. Well,
Redbubble is very slow shipping.
Slow shipping? Man, when I order stuff from Amazon, it gets here before I hang up the phone sometimes. And then I go out 6 o'clock in the morning to get the paper, and there's an Amazon package. It must come in the middle of the night or something. Amazing. Yeah, this will result in a nicer, and the decals will lay down better, and the final clear will be nicer, all at the same time. And the same price too. That's what I always like. So what we decided to do, corporate decision, we're going to move the stripe up about what, a third?
About 3/16 of an inch.
Okay, well we're going to remask. He's going to resand the whole tank, especially this area here.
Oh, really? Okay.
We're going to move that stripe up, back mask it, and I'm going to obviously airbrush it. And luckily I just bought a new roll of tinfoil, so you're home for you all. I don't have to send you to the store for tinfoil.
And you need some special.
Another
tinfoil.
giant saving.
You just don't use any ShopRite tinfoil.
Well, I used your clear today. You're using my tinfoil. I guess it works out in the end. All right, so Steve is going to reposition that stripe. All I need to do my half of it is just get it where you think it should be. Little known fact, he has the eyes of an eagle. Or was it a beagle? Anyway, this will be a 3-day process to move this stripe, but we'll get it done. I'll get some of it done today. We got a little more time left in our shop day here. Accuracy is his middle name.
Gotta follow that ridge.
Follow the ridge. So the way this day played out, Steve repositioned the stripe. We're just running too late here, and Karen has things for me to do, so we're going to call it quits. I'll get time to work on this in the next couple days. The part is sitting there with the clear drying, and it has been a very, very busy day. So, and I hope that part information about the paint, that information is useful. For a lot of people really don't know that. And I hope you enjoyed the video, of course, and thanks for watching.